guys, how's it going? Corey here from Themeco with a quick video discussing some of the user interface updates and workflow enhancements that we've made in this latest release cycle. So one of the things that we're most excited about in this release is customizable workspaces. You can now take any facet of the UI and pin it to various spots on the screen to suit your needs and preferences. So for example, I've got the bar that we all know and love to the left here right now where it previously always has been, but I can click anywhere in this bar and drag it, and as I move it, you'll see these drop zones appear. And I can place it in any one of those zones, and you'll see the screen reorient itself and kind of shift around. The great thing about this is, depending on what you're working on, or maybe the size of the screen you have, you'll have different needs, and quite frankly, some people just prefer to have things in a different spot. So being able to put things like the bar on different edges of the screen just really kind of gives a custom tailored feel to how you like things to work. Additionally, we've got a brand new navigation bar here. Some of these elements lived in different spots of the workspace, and navigating the document tree, but also the control groupings for different elements is such a crucial part of page building. We wanted to give that a dedicated specific spot to live. So this particular bar either needs to live at the bottom or top of your live preview. And that simply has to deal with these breadcrumbs getting lengthy, or maybe a larger element that you're working on. Sometimes this might scroll horizontally, so we kind of need to anchor it at the top or bottom of that live preview. And finally, we have our workspace, which can live on either side of the screen. And we can also take it to the top or bottom. And you'll see that when we do this, our control navigation starts scrolling horizontally, allowing us to move through the controls that way. And then another really cool thing is we can take it and unpin it and just have it floating over our workspace. And the really great thing about this is, depending on what kind of device you're working on, you might have a lot of extra real estate on your screen to work with. And perhaps having this workspace pinned all the way to the edge is just a lot of moving around when you're navigating a document. So you might want to unpin this and kind of leave it just floating off to the side a little bit. So plenty of really cool options there, and a lot of flexibility to really make things work the way you want it to. Next, we've got our updated workspace navigation, which you'll see up here. Things are a little bit different in terms of how we wanted to consolidate some of the workflows in the tool, and the workspaces over here are now dedicated to your general document outline, the inspector of whatever element you're currently working on, and these are how things have always been previously. And then we were also able to get in a contextual settings pane. So if you're working on a page, this would be like page meta options, things like that. Right now I'm working on a layout in the layout builder, so I've got some different controls there. And then this right here is one of the first big changes that we've made to really streamline some of the workflows in the tool. The final option in this navigation is your global theme options. So if you're working on a page or a header, at any time you can switch over to those global theme options, start moving through things, tweaking things the way you want. There's no more having to go to the menu, click on theme options, refresh the page, load a new context. It all happens live right within that same session that you're working on. Now, just as a quick note, you can still get to a standalone theme options page right here if you need to in the primary navigation, but we really do think that you guys are going to enjoy just working on things right here within the workspace that you're already using. Moving to our navigation here, you'll see that we've got things shuffled around just a little bit. Previously, we had some different tools and managers and builders kind of living in different spots of the interface. So in the previous iteration of this navigation menu, we had our builders and things like templates and design cloud, but certain things like the font manager or color manager, they were kind of tucked away in a settings modal that not only broke them out into a different spot, but for things like colors in particular, that modal would open up, cover up the screen, and you'd have to change your color and save it and close it and see if you liked it. So we really took some time to see how we could improve a lot of those little kind of micro workflows as well. And colors is a really cool example. So if I come here and click on colors, you'll see a tiny palette pop up right here. I've got some things that I've been working on here on my page, And as I'm scrolling through the page, I could come through and pick any of these colors, update that value, and we'll see things change live on the page, which is just a really big improvement from how things were before. And the same goes for our font manager. And there's just a lot of really quick access to the tools that you'll need at various times right from one location here in your main navigation. Another important change to discuss is how we work with various assets across our builders during the site building process. In previous versions of the tool, different builders had slightly different index screens for managing their content within, and we really wanted to focus on streamlining that approach in this release. So now, no matter if you're working with a global block, a header, or a layout, the process for adding and accessing all of that information is exactly the same across the board. So let's say I want to add a new page to my install. I'll click on the content builder here, and you'll see an index pop right up here in this submenu. This is a list of all the pages that I'm currently working on and could edit if I wanted to jump into them directly. If you have a really long list, you can click in the search box here and filter by keywords and have that list get pared down for you. To add a new asset, in this case a page, simply click on the plus button here, give it a title, and then we can select a status for our pages if we wish, and maybe a different page template if we want to use that. And we'll see the slug that's going to get created for us, and then we'll click Create Page. Now when you do this, the builder will automatically create that new page and take you right into it, because we're assuming that for the most part when you're making a new asset, you're going to work on that right away. If you haven't saved, you will see a prompt, and you can make sure that you've saved anything you're working on currently before moving to that new asset. And from there, you can simply start building and you're good to go. Again, this would work the same for all builders. So you'll see if I click into my header builder, I've got my one global header that I'm working on here. I could, of course, edit it or manage it if I need to do different actions on it. And if I want to add a new header, I'll click the plus button. And this screen looks a little bit different because, remember, we're working on headers, not pages, but the workflow is effectively the exact same. I would give it a title, create header, and I would jump right into that asset to be able to start working on it. So the last big thing I want to talk about is the toolbar, which features some of the primary actions that you're using on kind of a moment-to-moment basis while working on a page or any piece of content. Those actions include the elements library, responsive sizing, undo redo, and any custom code that you might be working on with your page. So the first big change I want to talk about here is our elements library, which previously was found in the workspace navigation, but you can now find it here front and center in the toolbar. Clicking on that icon will bring up a pop-up, which, much like the rest of the workspace, you can move around if you desire or resize to fit your needs. And then we can search for whatever we're working on. We can bring that up and then drag it into the workspace. Now, there are preferences that we can customize as to how this will operate. For example, we found that some users kind of like to leave this up all the time, in which case there's a preference to leave it pinned while it's open. And some users prefer to open up that elements pane, drag in an element, and have it close out directly. So you can adjust that very simply by going to the preferences here and going down and finding your auto close elements button. So what's really cool about this is that opening your elements now is not constantly losing the focus of whatever you're working on here over in the workspace. Additionally, working with elements is basically a keyboard shortcut away. I can just do on my Mac Command-Shift-E, and I can bring up or close out that pane very quickly and get to elements exactly how I need them and when I need them. The next action is our responsive resizer, which you are likely familiar with from previous iterations of the tool. Clicking on this will just bring the live preview in so you can see things at the different sizes that you're working on in the tool. And another big change we've made is we've removed our action, our history directly from the toolbar, which you can still get to here in the navigation. But what we've brought to the surface is a very quick undo redo action. So for example, if I went to this item here and I changed it to an H3 and then decided I wanted to take it back to an H2, instead of having to open up that action history modal and find the change I made, I can simply click undo and then I'm back to where I was previously. Or I can redo that change if I need. So Having these front and center is just really nice. And then of course, if you need to make really big changes back in the timeline of what you've been working on, you can get to your history right here. And last but not least, we've got our custom styles and custom scripts. Clicking on these will bring up a floater that you can move around the screen and of course resize just like everything else we've worked on. And a big change that we've made here, in addition with some of the other stuff, is no longer is the global CSS only found on the theme options page. We've surfaced that into the builder as well. So if I'm working on this layout, for example, I could add some CSS here that would be a thing on the page and adjust that, and then simply click right over into my global CSS and adjust those items directly within that same session. So once again, no more saving and going to another builder and refreshing just to make a little tweak. You can do that right here within the same editor. And the same thing goes for JavaScript as well. You've got your page level or asset level JavaScript as well as your global JavaScript right here to work on. All right, so before we move on to the preview manager, I want to run through a couple control updates that we've made in this release, namely the color picker, as well as these on-off toggles that you'll find all throughout the interface while you're working with various elements. So starting with the color picker, you'll see that for the most part, things look exactly as they did before. We've got our preview area to the left here, as well as a prompt to click in and adjust our colors as needed. The one primary difference is that if an element has an interaction color, meaning something that will update on hover, that color is no longer broken out into a secondary control. It's all baked into one control now. And this allows us to keep things much more compact in the inspector controls, as well as give you a few workflow enhancements here. So the first thing that is most obvious is when an interaction color is assigned, you'll see a split design here in the preview. So this color is our base color, and this yellow here is the interaction color we've selected for this icon's background. Clicking into this color, you'll see that at the very top we've got some tabs here. And if I have base selected, that's where I can adjust the base color, and then clicking over to interaction, I can adjust this color as I see fit. Now, if we wanted to pair these colors back together so that we don't have an interaction state, we're only just using one color for our output, we could simply go down here and copy the base value over to interaction, or you can select this link icon, which will bring you back to the base tab, and it will effectively set the same color for both values here. So now any change I make in here, you'll see that it's happening on both states. And then the nice thing about having this in one color picker is if I switch over to interaction, you'll see my color has remained in this exact same spot. And if I want to make a slight alteration for that interaction color, I can just find something that works. I can see the contrast here in the preview and then test it out in the live preview. And it's just a really nice workflow all around to get those base and interaction colors working the way you want. All right, so next, let's discuss these on-off toggles that you'll see in a lot of different situations, but primarily on things like border, border radius, margin, dimension, some colors, and also some control groupings. You can think of these as effectively a twofold control. Number one, you'll see that when a control is turned off, it's eliminated from the inspector here. This can be particularly useful on more complex elements where there can be a lot going on. So features that you're not using, simply turn them off and you'll get that control out of the way. Now the other thing this control does is it does serve as a way to turn off that value from being output in the dynamic CSS. Now we've always had rules in place that would eliminate and reduce unused values on the front end. So for example, if this icon had a 0em or 0 pixel border radius, that has never been output to the front end. We've always tried to be diligent about reducing that output as much as possible. However, you did always have to kind of manually zero it out if you needed. And it wasn't easy to quickly see changes from one to the other. So now we could have our value of 100 ems, let's say, to give us this rounded look. And I can simply turn off this toggle. And not only is the control being eliminated here in the inspector, so I've reduced that overhead, it's also being eliminated from the output on the front end, and I can also quickly preview that icon or whatever element I'm working on without that value being present. So it's kind of doing a lot of things at once, and it's really nice to be able to have a value set, and then turn it on and off to compare which one you prefer as you're working on it. And it's really great to be able to use it across multiple controls. So I could quickly preview this element with all these controls turned on, and then turn them all off and get a sense of how things look without any of that styling turned on. One final thing I want to note here with the margin control, you'll see when I turn this on here, I've got this right value of 3 which is kind of pushing it to the side a little bit. We've added this new auto left-right control, which when you click it, will set your right and left values to auto. Now, we can use this to horizontally center things for the most part in CSS. However, keep in mind that depending on the way you set up the structure in your document, maybe your columns are using flexbox and things are getting moved around a little bit, this might not always visually center something, but it will set those values for you at least. So if I click this button, you'll see that both my right and left values have gone to auto, and it also leaves your top and bottom values untouched. So nothing will get destructively altered there whenever you click that button. Now the last thing I want to discuss is the preview manager up here in the toolbar. And this is really an important piece, especially for pro users as they work through the layout builder and start creating layouts they want to use for single posts or blogs or archives. The really important piece to this is the context switcher at the top here, which effectively allows you to see what your content will look like in your template across all sorts of posts and pages that you're working with. So for example, I'm working on a single layout here that I'm assigning to all of my posts in the layout builder. And for this particular post, I've got a featured image. However, not all of my posts will have that featured image. So if I go through here and select one where I have intentionally not assigned one, we'll see that we get a different bit of content that gets output. So this allows us to see our layout in real time and compare and contrast how it works with all the different things we're going to throw at it from the user's perspective and make sure that it's working exactly how we want. This is also really helpful for headers and footers so that we can see how a particular header or footer might be responding to different contexts that we throw that design into. Now, something else I just want to briefly touch on here with regards to this particular post is the fact that you'll see from my layout here that featured image, now that I've got one that is not assigned here, that whole section went away for this post. And that is because I'm using our new element conditions feature, which essentially allows us to hide or show content based on a certain condition being met. So for example, if I didn't have a featured image output to my post, I wouldn't want there to be a broken image element put on the front end of my site for everyone to see. I would just want that section to go away entirely and keep my markup clean. Now, we apply those conditions directly to elements, and as you can see, since I'm previewing this page where I don't have a featured image, I can't quite get to that section here. You'll see that it's not seen over in the live preview. However, if I wanted to make a quick adjustment to the layout for that element, I can come over here to Element Conditions and select Ignore. And when I do that, the page will reload and it will effectively turn off any conditions I'm using on an element that might be used to hide it. And that allows me to, of course, see it here in the live preview. I could jump up to that element and maybe adjust its condition if I need to, or tweak the styling. Basically just do whatever I need and adjust it in this context, and then I could turn this back off and we'll see the post behave as it did before. Another really important workflow is working with scroll effects. You'll see on this page here when it's loaded, I've got all these different text elements kind of flying in at different times, and the text down here kind of fades in. And all of that is really fun to work with, but there might be times where you need to kind of lock an element in its in or out position and style it accordingly. So we have this option right here where you can do just that. If you want to not have your scroll effects keep triggering over and over and over again while you're working on a long page maybe, you could lock this to the in position and nothing will change as you scroll up and down the page. Conversely, if you have an out style that you're working on and you want to just tweak things, you can set this to out, and now on the front end, when things are in the out position, they're not clickable, but Back here, you'll see I can still get to this stuff even though it's hidden, and I could adjust maybe its default transform or its state, its opacity, get it how I want working, and then turn this back off, and then I'll see all of those scroll effects fire again. So I think that just about covers it. We are very excited about this release and all of the just improvements we feel we were able to make to the tool, and we really look forward to getting it in y'all's hands and seeing y'all work on some stuff live and just getting it out into the world.